Hello, everybody. Welcome to the music rating, ranking, and reviewing. Oh, fuck it. It's Ringo time. I did all the other Beatles earlier this year. Time to get into it. Peace and love. Peace and love. Alex, familiarity with Ringo.
Um, well, I so here's my honest answer is Ringo at one point when I was a kid was my favorite Beatle. Um, so I don't know what it was. I think it's because the personality, he was more kind of just the goofy one, the stereotypically goofy one. And um then I grew up, I guess. And I'm not trying to hate on people whose favorite Beatle is Ringo. It is what it is. But um, I'm not drawn to him anymore. He's very much slid down the totem pole for me in general. Um, as far as familiarity with his solo stuff, I grew up with this compilation. I think it was just called Photograph. It came out in like the late 2000s, and it's pretty much every song you need from Ringo. A lot of his biggest hits, and I don't think I listened to a proper Ringo solo album until like I was in college. Um, and yeah, I have heard all of these before. Like I want to say this is my third time running through the catalog, which is I don't know why I've done this to myself. Um, I have also heard, which we're not talking about, but the Scouse the Mouse children's album, um, which is very bland, but still like this is gonna set the tone. Like this video is gonna be a bloodbath. Like we're not gonna mince words. This is gonna be brutal. Um, but the Scouts the Mouse children's album, which is not good, still might be in the top half of this list. Um, I have also, I until recently actually, I had avoided listening to the three 2020s EPs, Zoom In, Change the World, and EP3. So I did decide to listen to those finally, just as kind of an epilogue. Um, I don't know what I expected. It's as lousy as I expected, but I think we're going to leave it at that. This is going to be brutal. I love the Beatles. I do, but it's not the worst solo catalog I've ever heard. I think if we're talking like a minimum of like 4 or 5 albums, then it's got to be either, well, for minimum of four, My Glove of the Beach Boys, bar none is the worst. Um, Otherwise, Robin Gibb from the Bee
Yeah,
Gees, that's pretty like Robin Gibb made like 7 albums and not a single one is good. Like that's pretty incredible. Like that takes some talent or lack thereof. But Ringo's catalog, especially 20 albums worth, is like people on YouTube are very positive about it. Some people are, and bless their hearts. For the most part, I do not see it. I do not see it at all. Now I'm curious what your familiarity was going into this.
nothing. Never heard a full album. Hell, don't even think I ever heard a full song. I
Wow.
legitimately only did this because I wanted to complete the quadrilogy, and I
Mhm.
came to you wanting to do the Bee Gees, and you threw out Ringo. So I
Well, we'll
blame
do
you
the
for
Bee
this
Gees.
as much as I blame you about Angelic to the Core.
We'll do
So
the Bee Gees one day. We will.
absolutely,
It
we
will be
fuck
much better than this.
we fucking better.
Yeah.
That being said, let's get into this five at a time. You're right about this being a bloodbath. Let's just get right into it. Number 20. Don't think that this is quite your bottom. I can't comprehend how this isn't one of the worst albums of all time to most people. I want to be Santa Claus. Let's be brutal. This is Ringo making horrible covers of Christmas songs in the late 90s. The production is horrid, and the songs are incredibly dreadful. I hate, I really can't stand most Christmas music in general, and I really can't stand it when late 90s Ringo is trying to sing over it with his already weathering vocals that only get worse. Any type of ethnic Caribbean or sort of non-English or American influence that Ringo brings in is consistently awful throughout the entirety of his catalog, and this is really the worst usage of it. I want to point out now, anytime that anybody suggested to Ringo, hey, you should add some steel drums onto the song, fucking die. It is awful every time. This album was truly torture, and I never want to listen to it again. I have this at 1 star, and I'm being very generous. Number 19. Oh, this one just as bad. I got Give More Love. This is horrifically awful to me. Ringo can't rock. Ringo exists in one lane, and that is incredibly generic, schmaltzy soft pop. And even then, most of the time, he's pretty bad at it. He doesn't have the vocal chops to rock in the way that he does. It's like whenever Mike Love was in a rock band in the late 70s, and even then, I'd say Mike Love could do it better. The band isn't up to snuff here, and the production here is genuinely awful. The guitars are disgustingly loud for a Ringo album, and even worse, the drum production. The snare sound on the vast majority of Ringo's catalog is truly nails on the chalkboard. As well, auto tune is truly the greatest enemy of Ringo, as his voice is already pretty bad as is. Like, I don't know, he fit for the like 5 songs the Beatles gave him, but give him over 200 through the solo catalog, and it really does make you want to shrill up and die. Let's just get out of the way. So Wrong for So Love is the only somewhat okay track on here, but the 2 songs that come before it are 2 of his worst songs ever, in which he is horribly butchering the name of the lovely Bob Marley, and one of the songs that I forgot the title of, and his absolute worst song being Electricity, which has some of the worst vocal production I have ever heard since the Farrah Abraham album from 2012. The lyrics are absolutely abysmal, and I truly couldn't stand a second of it. It's another 1-star affair, and once again, that feels very kind. Number 18, I'm going with Postcards from Paradise. This is where Ringo truly just started to release evil, vile albums. His vocals to this point are truly insufferable, with some of the worst auto-tune and pitch correction out there, most notably on the god-awful title track here, and of course, Rory and the Hurricanes. But the highlight of this, oh god, has to be Island in the Sun, which is another one of the worst songs I think ever made. Dreadfully nothing lyrics, horrid reggae influence, and an awful vocal performance by Ringo. Truly bullets to the ears. This album took me somewhere that I hadn't gotten to since the Christmas album. My time with it was pretty vile. I have it at a star and a half solely due to some alright guitar flourishes throughout it, but still pretty awful. 17, I think that this one might be a little low for people, but I have Roto Graver. This album is just purely schlock. It is a mindless 70s soft pop cheese fest without any of the charm of a good Ringo song. And more often than not, the songs simply overpower him. It's a mind-numbing 35 minutes without a single part of noteworthy musicianship or a catchy chorus. It's become clear that any artistry he may have had within the Beatles is already long gone by the point that he's sold out on his 5th album. 2 stars, just not what I want to listen to at all. Number 16, I'm going with the album Why Not. It's another very bland, generic Ringo album butchered by awful production. The guitars on this album are way heavier than they need to be and just straight up sound horrible. The same goes along with the terrible drum sounds across the albums and the songs. And one especially had a vile drum machine on it, which I can't even remember the name for because most of the drums sound the same on this shit. In addition, the backing vocals on the other side of Liverpool are just awful. The way Ringo comes in at the end of the song Who's Your Daddy is incredibly awkward, to put it lightly. It's a 2-star album. It's fully mediocre and lacks any decent songwriting, and it's even more ruined by its production. That's where we're starting at. So,
Wow. Rotogravure that low. Oh my god.
I
Wow.
hated it. I hated it.
I mean, we're gonna find out that I don't love it by any means. Although I wouldn't say I love any Ringo albums, frankly. But wow, that 17th. Damn. And somehow
Catalog
you
is not good. This
it's
catalog is
not.
not good.
It's not. And somehow you didn't talk about my bottom record. So here's the thing, like in the other times I've appeared on your channel, God bless. The worst album I've had to talk about, in my opinion, bar none, Elton John's Victim of Love. That's the only 1-star album that I have talked about on this channel. There are 2 records of Ringo Starr's that are worse than Victim of Love without question. So let's talk about my number 20, a very special album, 2019's What's My Name. God, this I was tempted to go half star on this thing. This is one of the worst albums I have ever listened to, bar none. Now there are so many problems with 2010's Ringo, so many problems. And I understand the guy is in his 70s, and I would be willing to be more graceful if he had ever actually been all that good of a singer or a musician, aside from like his drumming, which I mean, there's nothing really to speak of in these 2000s albums. Um, but this album is just on another level of just kind of demented awfulness. The the 2010s records are either produced or engineered by this guy named Bruce Sugar, who I absolutely know nothing about. Um, but I understand that he met Ringo in Nashville or something like that. And I can't tell how much of the production flaws are actually Ringo's fault, or how much of them are Bruce Sugar. Doesn't really matter. These records sound like shit. The vocal processing from Ringo, which I've heard that is apparently Ringo's decision, is just abysmal. Abysmal. Um, the opening track, Gotta Get Up to Get Down. Oh, this is a special song. This is a special piece of shit. Uh, Joe Walsh rapping about everybody's on the internet. What's up with that? Everybody's on Facebook doing their thing. Nobody knows what the thing is. Like, I remember listening to that for the first time when this came out and laughing my ass off. It is so, like, it's such boomer perspective on life, and it's so comically awfully done, and it's so earnest. It's so earnest in its badness. It's just terrible. um the cover of Money, That's What I Want. I mean, you're talking about bad vocal effects. To me, that one takes the cake. I don't know what they were thinking there. It sounds horrible, absolutely
It,
awful.
if I may remark, I'd argue it
Yes.
sounds almost akin to like a Black Eyed Peas song in how
Uh,
awful the production is, but it's like a step below that, even
oh, it's
still.
absolutely a step below that, because there's a
But
level of technical competence with Black Eyed Peas records, even if the vocal effects aren't your thing necessarily. I just, um, Grow Old With Me, Ringo. If that means listening to more albums like this, I would rather get hit by a dump truck today. Um, it's 1 star. It's 1 star. It's awful. It is an awful album. We're gonna move on. Number 19, 2015's Postcards from Paradise, 1 star. Um, again, Ringo, the last three Ringo albums, he's credited as sole producer, even though, again, you got this Bruce Sugar guy clearly in the mix. And all of these albums sound like absolute shit. You know, the processing compared between this and 2012, like it's like a huge difference. Like this record sounds terrible. Um, the themes of nostalgia are absolutely unbearable on a lot of these songs, from the opening track Rory and the Hurricanes with these really cheesy female backing vocals, which he does all the time on these albums. And it very rarely works. um, but you named it. um, I mean, Island in the Sun is bad, but you named the title track. The title track is another special little beast, with all of its attempts to worm in all these Beatles song titles into one song. It's just hilarious in how forced it is. It almost makes you cheer by the end of it. You're like, yes, the guy named another one, the asshole. 1 star, terrible. Number 18, 1981's Stop and Smell the Roses, 1.5 stars. There are parts of this album that are tolerable. There are parts of this album that are tolerable. Um, dare I say that the Steven Stills song is actually decent, kind of decent. And then there are moments on this record that rival the worst music I've heard in my life. Um, the person who ruins this album more than anybody else, I'm sorry, I know people love him, Harry Nilsson. Harry Nilsson ruins this album every time he steps in. He's giving Ringo all these kind of zany vaudeville numbers, like the title track, which is just like, I know it's trying to be funny. I'm not laughing. Drumming Is My Madness isn't a joke song so much as it is just like a joke of a song. And then another special pile of shit, the cover of Back Off Boogaloo. Um, like all sorts of Beatles song quotes everywhere. Like, it's one thing to like cover a song that's only 10 years old. Like already that's pretty cringy, but to do all this self-referential shit, the weird spoken word stuff in the middle that's really awful, and then that hideous screech at the end of the song, which I'm pretty sure is Harry Nilsson doing that. I don't know why. I couldn't believe that was in there when I first heard it. But oh my God, like I don't understand these decisions. There's no sense of quality control on these Ringo albums whatsoever. Whatsoever. So yeah, 1.5 stars for that. I wanted to give it 1 star, but there's too many moments that are like okay on there. Okay, that's about as like upset and escalated as I'm gonna be. Number 17, 1999's I Want to Be Santa Claus is 1.5 stars for me. I just don't care. It's essentially a Ringo children's album, or at least the closest he gets to doing something like that. But the really loud as fuck production, courtesy of Mark Hudson. God, Mark Hudson ruins everything he touches on these records. It's really unfortunate. Doesn't exactly sound like the comforting type of holiday cheer you'd like to get out of that kind of music. Most interesting thing on here is the closing track, Peace Be With You, with its usage of traditional Indian instruments. And I mean, I guess the reason it isn't lower is that most of this isn't quite bad enough to be offensive, at least for me. But I, yeah, it just really, it is tough to listen to. It is very tough to listen to. And then number 16, jumping up to 2 stars for 2017's Give More Love. Again, the production choices are painful here, but I do think the actual songs are generally a bit better than Postcards from Paradise, sometimes quite a bit better. I actually think So Wrong for So Long is pretty decent for the most part, and certainly the most natural sounding Ringo song of the 2010s, I think, just production wise and songwriting wise. But again, bad stuff on here. We're on the Road Again opens the album with this really sick sounding guitar riff, sick in the sense that it sounds physically ill, just out of tune enough to be really grating. I love Paul McCartney, but his screams in this one are really showing his age. He sounds like an old man on this one. And then Electricity, like you said, it's just awful vocoder effect that doesn't it doesn't ruin the song, but that's because the song itself is really bad. So that's my logic there. So yeah, 2 stars for Give More Love, number 16.
I would like to remark there's definitely one song on the Christmas album, which for me, I wouldn't say it's like individual songs are typically that bad. It's more so the cumulative experience of listening to it, because the production's also heinous, like borderline evil. But his version of White Christmas is truly a travesty on. I won't even just say the world of music. I will say on life as a whole. I think it is truly a stand upon my existence as a person. With that being said, though, next batch of 5, 15, kind of surprised this didn't make either of our bottom fives, going Ringo the fourth. Pretty lousy record, 2 stars. It's boring, generic, a highly processed attempt for credit by Ringo. By not having a massive group of all-stars, it still is just incredibly overproduced. He can't sing the songs because he's consistently overshadowed by the production. Like there's a couple of decent moments and nothing is like overtly awful across it. It's just not really an enjoyable listen, and it lacks any highlight to even give it mediocrity. So it's still pretty lousy. Number 14, I have Your Christmas Episode. I got What's My Name. As of this date, it's Ringo's final proper studio album, and he does nothing different. It's the same bland, boring pop rock he's been making at this point for over 50 years. The songs are generally painfully mediocre. Ringo's voice has not aged gracefully. It's not aged anywhere near as gracefully as his skin has, which I want to remark. So I want to give Ringo one slight positive. He has aged remarkably. Like it is insane seeing how good he looks in his later years compared to Paul McCartney. But I don't know. There's the 1 point Ringo has over Paul. There you go. If you thought
Plastic surgery will do that to a man.
Listen, he needs whatever he can get. Just give him that. I don't know. Guitars aren't quite as bad as the prior albums, but they're still pretty bad sounding. And the title track, as well as especially Money, are just terrible. 2 stars for it. Pretty bad. Number 13, I got Stop and Smell the Roses. Another pretty lousy album. I actually kind of thought what he was doing with the slight new wave infusion on Big Boy was kind of cool, I guess. But here it just loses any charm because the vast majority of the time it's more of the schlock, schmaltzy pop stuff he just kind of sucks at. First two songs, they were all right. But the only real highlight here is the admittedly pretty decent track Attention. Past that, it's just not a very good album, in my opinion. 2 stars. We're still in 2 stars for a fair bit here. Number 12, I got Liverpool 8. It's fine. It's just another Ringo album. I actually thought this one was going to be kind of cool and almost kind of be like Microphones in 2020, where Ringo chronologues his career with the opener. No, it's just another really gross soft pop effort. None of the songs are good. The performances are painfully bland, and it struggles to ever grip you into a song. It's listenable. I just never want to listen to it again. 2 stars. And number 11, shout out to Dylan Seavey with what he considers the worst Ringo album, Ringo 2012, just missing out on my top 10. Still at 2 stars. And my last 2 stars. He's made 10 passable albums. Big clap for Ringo. Good job, man. Didn't think you could do it. Yeah, I thought this was going to be a lot worse. It's another 2 stars. Still pretty blah. Awful production and some really poor song choices with awful reggae influence. And this is really where the vocal production starts to just. The auto-tune usage on here is really, it's not as bad as what he would later do, but it's still bad. Songs are, once again, they're fine, they're innocent, they're boring. There's really nothing to remark about this album. It's somewhat lousy, and it's not something I'm ever going to look for. But I mean, at least he's not talking about Christmas. It's number 11, Ringo 2012, 2 stars.
Well, God, comparing Liverpool 8 to Microphones in 2020, like that is not a comparison I thought I would hear in my life.
To clarify, Microphones in 2020 is 2 stars higher. I have that at a high 4, actually. Yes. I need to listen to more of his work. I really like what I've heard.
Yes. Yeah. Oh gosh. There is one of those albums that you've mentioned so far will be significantly higher on my list, but we will get to it. You might be right. My number 15 is going to be Ringo 2012. It's mercifully short. My number 14, I have nothing else to say. It's a lot of, there's a couple of covers on here. They are what they are. Cover the remake of Wings, obviously not as good. It's just, it's 2 stars. Number 14, the record right before it, 2010's Why Not? Again, just bad production. The title track sounds like absolute shit. Like it sounds horrible. There's a Joss Stone duet. I don't know what the fuck that was about. Kind of random. And not even the Paul McCartney duet, which is kind of pleasant on Walk With You. Not even that can uplift that song from mediocrity, and that's still probably the best thing here. It's 2 stars. Just nothing much to say about it. Number 13, record you have not mentioned, 1998's Vertical Man. 2 stars again. This is the first album to be produced by Mark Hudson. And I already mentioned him on the Christmas album, but just to be clear, Mark Hudson takes, on this album in particular, he takes the formula that Ringo was already starting to do on Time Takes Time and follows it pretty much exactly. But Hudson ratchets everything up to 10. These albums are loud as shit constantly, and it's really distracting. There's no sense of dynamic range at all. And that has hurt these records. That has hurt these albums significantly. The album is 10 minutes longer than Time Takes Time. Again, just kind of sounds physically ill at times. The song Minefield is like a "We Didn't Start the Fire" like type of reference. I do not appreciate that. And the Love Me Do cover is terrible. It's really awful. The reason this album isn't lower is that there are a couple of decent moments, and there's actually one song that I do like a fair bit, King of Broken Hearts. I have nostalgia from hearing that on on that Ringo compilation growing up. And it's one of the last appearances from George Harrison on any record before he died too, which is really cool. But yeah, it's too long. It sounds not good, and there's not much in the way of positives to take home. So 2 stars for Vertical Man. Number 12, we're jumping up to 2.5 here for 1978's Bad Boy. Um, Bad Boy blends the poor songwriting on Ringo's Rotogravure with the disco flair of Ringo the Fourth, along with a mix of very questionable cover choices. I don't know what the cover of Where Did Our Love Go is doing here. I don't like it. Suffice to say, this whole record doesn't work. Ringo sounds very disinterested throughout the whole thing. I the title track is terrible, but I do like Lipstick Traces on a Cigarette. I think that's a nice cover. And then the final song, A Man Like Me. I talked about that Scouse the Mouse children's album. That is a remake, actually, of a song from the Scouse the Mouse children's album that was originally called A Mouse Like Me. So if that gives you a sense of the quality control we're dealing with. So yeah, 2.5 stars for Bad Boy. Number 11, 2.5 stars again for 2005's Choose Love. It's the best sounding Mark Hudson album, probably, just in terms of not being constrictively loud, but you really are starting to hear the age on Ringo's vocals here, and the additional processing that they're requiring because of that is becoming impossible to ignore. I'd be lying if I said I remembered much of any songs off of this thing. It's probably the most anonymous Ringo album to me. The Chrissy Hynde song, I don't know. I kind of like it a little bit, maybe, but it's still a bit strange. And there is no reason for Oh My Lord to be 6 fucking minutes long. Like it's a slog. That alone might be responsible for lowering this album a half star, frankly. But yeah, 2.5 stars for Choose Love, my number 11.
Nice, nice, interesting. This is gonna be where our lists start to diverge a little bit, so that's cool. Also, let's just get right into this top 10 one at a time. I suspect we're going to be trading off fairly quickly between one another. Number 10, I'm going with the record Old Wave. This is just such a fucking boring ass album. The arrangements are fine. Ringo sounds decent enough. It's him mixing in that 70s pop rock style with some slight AOR touches. It's fine. There aren't any noteworthy songs, but it's not bad. It's 2.5 stars. A perfectly fine album without a single interesting quality to it. So number 10, Old Wave. There you go.
All right. My number 10 is also 2.5 stars. I have 2008's Liverpool 8 here. Kind of interesting in the sense that, yeah, you get Mark Hudson back, and he's kind of present, but actually, the person. So I guess the timeline is that Mark Hudson was in. He ends up leaving the project because Ringo wanted to add more like electronic effects to his voice in the album, and Mark's like, "No, I'm not doing that." So Ringo gets Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics to come in and produce this. And I suppose it is better sounding than other Ringo records. It's more sonically interesting, a bit more stylistic variety. The heavy backing vocals on this remind me of a late career Brian Wilson solo album in a little bit. Um, the songs are not there at all, though. Like Ringo has been getting writing credits on his songs before this, but starting with Liverpool 8, these songs really feel like Ringo songs in the sense that they are very basic rhyme schemes, very cliched in every which way. The title track, again, kind of like what you were saying, it's another trip down the road of Beatles nostalgia with the absolute most basic rhyming schemes humanly possible. I don't know if I have a highlight on here. I guess Paso Dobles, maybe. It's kind of different. But yeah, again, kind of anonymous. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's 2.5 stars, and somehow my number 10.
Yeah. This is a real To clarify, I don't know if this is gonna go up before or after. This is the one that we did just after Bowie, which we were slightly higher on David Bowie as an artist than we are on Ringo Starr, ever so marginally. Number 9 would be one of your winner picks for me. I got Time Takes Time. I don't know. The Ringo album. There's just nothing going for him for me. It's just another boring, lame ass pop album to me, with his still fairly average and elementary singing. There's just nothing that draws me to it. The songs are mediocre. The production can't save it. And on the whole, by this point, I was just already tired of him. Outside of the opener, it's another batch of pretty fully skippable material for me. I meant 2.5 stars for it. I don't know. It's a Ringo album.
I'm shocked. I'm genuinely shocked. Wow.
This being that low for me is more shocking than any stylistic decision Ringo made in his entire discography.
I possibly, I guess. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna need some time to recover from that one. Um, my number 9, I also needed time to recover from, but not quite as much. It is 1976's Ringo's Rotogravure. It is 2.5 stars, although it is my last 2.5 star record, which kind of surprised me. We're going to start getting a little bit positive now. There are actually a few Ringo albums that grew on me. This was
Nice.
not one of them. This was not one of them. Rotogravure is a strange album. I suppose it's kind of nice in its own way, in a vaguely pleasant sort of way. The songs by Vinnie Poncia give Ringo a chance to try a bit of Latin music at times, which is pleasantly cringy, not quite offensive, I suppose, but yeah, just in a lot of ways, it's a worse third installment of the mid 70s Ringo records. You have very similar types of songwriting, but across the board, weaker songs. Again, this is the last record to feature contributions by all 4 Beatles. John and Paul both play and write songs. George contributes one song on here, I'll Still Love You, which is an outtake from All Things Must Pass. And George disliked Ringo's version so much that he actually sued him, which is amazing to think about. Yeah, it's very bland. Pure Gold, the Paul McCartney song. That thing slogs like hell. I suppose Cooking in the Kitchen of Love is the best by process of elimination, but that's not much to say. Kind of unfortunate that that's Lennon's last like contribution to a record for almost 5 years before he comes back with Double Fantasy. But I don't know. There's some okay stuff. A Dose of Rock and Roll I think is pretty good. But otherwise, yeah, it's just a weaker version of what came before it. 2.5 stars that is somewhat close to being 3 stars, but I can't quite get there. But again, we are going to be hitting 3 stars. So 8 Ringo albums at 3 or more, 8 albums that I like.
You're sounding like some of these YouTube channels right now, praising Ringo.
Well, at least I'm not like what's his face, Mean Mr. Mayo or whatever. Like
That mayonnaise.
I'm not trying to shade the guy. He seems like a nice guy, but he had What's My Name at like number 3, which is absolute insanity. Was it number 2?
I think it was number 2.
Oh Lord, I cannot understand that. Here's the thing. Sorry, I need to get on my soapbox very briefly. Very briefly. My whole thing is like I'm trying to be like positive with like music, and my whole goal is to try to like understand how people can enjoy like any piece of music, because I think all of it has inherent value. So people who enjoy the records that I have thoroughly shat on here, not trying to take away your thing. Like if you like it, fantastic. Just understand I'm not at the part of my journey to where I can understand why people like some of these albums. Like if you enjoy What's My Name, like I genuinely cannot fathom how. And you know what? I'm just going to take that as that's growth that I need to do. That's some growth that I need to work on. So I'm going to leave it at that. So I apologize for being negative. And I think you could sum up Ringo's career in this way. I don't understand. I don't understand.
For what it's worth, I'm not trying to understand. This catalog fucking sucks. Get over it. Number 8 for me, I have no clue how people feel about this album. I have Goodnight Vienna. This is a weird one for me. In many ways, the songs are basically the same quality as the Ringo album, which you'll later see. Not a good thing for me. The arrangements are still fine, and the performances are solid. The opening title track might even be one of Ringo's best songs overall. Mind you, not a high bar to clear, but still. There's a sense of annoyance I get with this album, and in some ways with Ringo as well. I don't know. Ringo's fine. He's just not a great singer. The material is fine, but it's incredibly lightweight, and it just lacks something to put it all together. It feels like, I don't know. I'm gonna draw a comparison because this is an artist that I like a lot, and I understand why people don't. I really like Carly Simon. For example, though, she's very sort of light, very much. I'd say you could argue like a diet version of some of the more sophisticated singer songwriters of that time, like Joni Mitchell, like Carole King. But I don't know. There's a sense of fun. There's a sense of charm. There's a sense of sort of wonder in her music. I would say it's very soft. It's very cheesy. It's very enjoyable. Ringo, I feel like, goes for a similar thing as just something that Carly Simon would do on like a Hotcakes record, taking it in a more overt pop direction. However, Ringo has no charm. He has no style. He has no class. Donkey Kong Country rap. He is just simply not good. He does not have a funny bone in his body. He is not Donkey Kong. I don't know. There's just nothing to pull this all together. It's a 2.5 star album. It's very fine. It passes, but it has like a C minus compared to a B, which is that's a generous grade I would not give to the whole catalog. So number 8, Goodnight Vienna, 2.5 stars. Good job.
I'm just like, I'm trying to keep track of like what's going to be in your top five now. Like, this is wild to me. And you have not mentioned any albums that I love, again, because I don't love any Ringo albums, but I'm just like, I don't know why I'm this shocked by like some of these albums that you have lower.
The concept of loving a Ringo album should not exist. I'll just throw it out there. I understand people love the Beatles.
Mhm.
Yes, Ringo was good in a band. Ringo was probably the least talented person in his all-star band. Which,
Probably, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
good. That's all. I'll step away from shitting on Ringo for the next 2 minutes now.
Okay. Um, my number 8 is an album that I find very pleasant. It's not good, but it is very pleasant. And for that, I am okay bumping it to 3 stars. 1970s Sentimental Journey. Um, it's sort of a quirky take on jazz standards. Uh, and I say quirky just because the whole thing is a novelty. That was the intention from day one. Um, and you have all these like random arrangers that are contributing to this, and some of them are like really like prominent people in the jazz world. Like Quincy Jones arranges one song, Oliver Nelson, freaking Elmer Bernstein arranges one song, but then you have like fucking like Paul arranges one. Uh, Morris Gibb from the Bee Gees arranges one of the songs. Um, just really random choices. And again, it's all pleasant. Like there's nothing that's outwardly bad. Um, but there's nothing all that good here either. And his voice does not fit well. Again, that's part of the novelty of it. Ringo, like we'll just be blunt. Like let's just call it for what it is. Ringo Starr has never been a good singer. He has always been the type of singer where if he were to like perform at karaoke night at a bar, people would be like, yeah, he's got a pretty decent voice because he can stay kind of in tune. Um, and there's value to that like approach, right? But let's not pretend that it compares anything to his old bandmates, certainly. Um, and let's not pretend like it can fit in a jazz album either. It does not. But I do disagree with what you said earlier on one point, which is that I do think Ringo does have a sense of natural charisma. Um, And I think you do feel that, especially if you watch like live performances and stuff like that. He's very good at interacting with the crowd. Um, and even if, well, and if you watch like his films and stuff like that, like, yeah, he's playing a character, but I'm talking about the Beatles films, not like the films that Ringo starred in as a solo person. But I think even in those films, he's usually the best thing in them, apart from the music, because he is, I think the way my favorite author, Mark Lewison, talks about him is that he is a sort of Marx Brothers like character and how he approaches humor. And there's value to that. Um, so I do think he has the charisma of like an old, like traditional vaudeville singer who's not technically all that good, but can command stage attention on some level. And so, in that sense, I think Sentimental Journey is more enjoyable than it has any right to be, but that still only makes it my number 8. It's barely clinging on to a 3-star rating. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I guess the best thing here is maybe like Bye Bye Blackbird or something like that, if I had to pick one, which is funny because that's the Morris Gibb arrangement, but I don't know. It's all kind of in one ear and out the other.
You gotta say, knowing what Quincy Jones said about the Beatles in the past, it's funny to imagine he arranged for Ringo. Anyways, my number 7, Sentimental Journey. This is a pleasant album. The arrangements are nice. Ringo sings them well, and on the whole, they're well made and performed song. However, there is no personality. This is an incredibly devoid album of anything interesting or anything unique. It is well crafted. It is well made. It is well performed. It is boring. It is 2.5 stars. Good on him for making it. Why would I ever want to listen to it? Thank you, Ringo. Good night.
Vienna. Um, that was bad. We're struggling here. We're struggling to get through the rest of this, I think. Um, Number 7, an album that you had significantly lower and were surprised that I didn't have near my bottom. 1977's Ringo the Fourth, 3 stars. I have not seen the Todd in the Shadows video about this album yet, so I am curious to see what his assessment is of this album. I'd imagine it's probably somewhat similar to mine, which is that this is a fucking mess. This is a fucking mess of an album. Um, and not only is it a mess of an album just in general, it contains the most demented vocals of Ringo's career. I mean, this man is like screaming his lungs out, like on this record, like every song almost. So naturally, it's one of the best records of his career because it's one of the most interesting things he's ever done. Um, I like, so Arif Mardin comes back. He produced Ringo's Rotogravure as well. Martin, of course, the producer who worked with like the Bee Gees and helped popularize their sound. God, we keep talking about the Bee Gees. Like it's karma. It means
I
we have to
tried
do
to
them
do the
next.
Bee Gees. I
It means we have to
tried.
do them next. It means we have to do them
I
next,
think we
right?
have other stuff in the works beforehand, though. That's the issue.
Perhaps, but um, but yeah, I think his sound works fine for this. It would be again somewhat anonymous sounding. Um, although I think the arrangements here are more interesting in general than Rotogravure, so I think it is a step up in that sense. But the vocals that he's delivering and the kind of subject matter of these songs, there's a lot of themes of lost love, of alcoholism, and kind of being on the brink mentally. And I think the reason why that resonates um, in kind of a sad way is that it reflects his actual mental state at the time. Like the thing that people don't talk about a lot with Ringo, because we talk about his like happy-go-lucky peace and love, et cetera, type of attitude, um, is that the guy went through a very dark period for a long time where he was in between record labels, couldn't get a consistent contract, and he just like I think he felt the fall off from his time with the Beatles. He got divorced. He married his second wife. went into alcoholism, and it's a very dark period, and a period where, Ringo is someone who is famous for, like, he said he does not want to write an autobiography of anything like that. And I think his period of time in the late 70s and through the 80s is exactly why, because he doesn't want to relive that time. And I think if he did try to relive that time, he would actually come across very badly. But without going too far into that, I think that's what makes this album work, is that it does feel like perhaps the most genuine, profound artistic statement he's ever made, which is not saying all that much. And I'm not saying it's the most enjoyable record he's ever made, but it does seem the most connected to who he is, or who he was at the time. Drowning in the Sea of Love is a chaotic opening track that I love because of the chaos. I actually genuinely, unironically like Wings a lot. I really do like that song. And yeah, and I think those are the clear two highlights, but everything else is, I think, at bare minimum, pretty listenable. And I don't know. Again, I think in a catalog like this, you go with what's interesting. Like the things that jump out of the headphones, jump out of the speakers, are what I'm going to be drawn to. And Ringo the Fourth, I actually thought it would be higher than it was, but a couple of other albums grew on me more. But number 7, not half bad. 3 stars for Ringo the Fourth.
To clarify, I didn't think that I wasn't surprised that you had it that you didn't have it lower. I thought that I figured you would have it a bit higher, knowing your fondness for that sort of 60s. Basically, just because I know you like the Bee Gees, it's very discount Bee Gees, I would say, in that period, which is where I think it plays off. And I figured, I was saying it more so. I think that people will be surprised that it wasn't in either of our bottom fives. And to be honest, it could be higher. I don't care. The bottom records all suck, so it really didn't matter. Number 6. I think I have this one way higher than most people. Oh well, I got Bad Boy. This came right after Ringo's very sad attempt at doing disco. And for me, it's a slight improvement. He's tackling into a bit of new wave, and it's a nice change of pace. Sadly, he doesn't fully commit to it, and it often falters into more of the bland pop music he'd been doing. Despite the last 2 albums, this one has a couple of songs I liked, which is really the only reason why some of the albums up higher are higher, is because it actually had songs that I liked. Who Needs a Heart, Heart on My Sleeve, Old Time Revolving, all pretty good for Ringo. Good job. I mean, it's still 2.5 stars. It's still mediocre. I wouldn't recommend it at all. They just had a couple of highlights, so good on you, boss. Number 6, Bad Boy.
All right. My number 6 is going to be 2003's Ringo Rama. 3 stars again. Pretty solid 3 stars too. This is an interesting blend of traditional, like, post comeback Ringo material with these interesting rock numbers, like more interesting rock numbers than you get really on any other Ringo album. Like Instant Amnesia, like if we're talking individual songs, that might be the most interesting thing he ever did from a musical standpoint. It's just so bizarre. Again, Mark Hudson is on the boards here, so the production is very loud, but I wouldn't say it ruins the record or anything close to that. I can overlook it. Never Without You, it's cheesy, of course, but it's a tribute song, and it comes from a very, like, genuine place. So I find myself really enjoying it for the most part. I think that's a clear highlight. The Willie Nelson song, I suppose, is pretty nice too. Again, kind of looking back on it, I realize it's maybe a little bit more anonymous of a record than I'm giving it credit for, though maybe that's also because I binged the whole catalog in like 48 hours. So all of these hundreds of Ringo songs are just like more morphing themselves in my head pretty much. But this was one of the records where when I put it on, I found myself enjoying it more actively than I did a lot of the others. Like I actually would have a moment in there where I was like, dang, I am actively enjoying this. And that does not happen with most of the other Ringo records. So that's where we're at. So Ringo Rama, you would never know it based off the album cover. That album cover is one of the worst things you'll ever see in your life. But I'll be damned. Not half bad. Not half bad at all. 3 stars. Number 6, Ringo Rama.
Nice, nice. This is probably one of the fucking weirdest choices in my list. This top five is so bizarre. My number five is Choose Love. Uh, I don't fucking know. I'm not. It's not really much putting this above his other albums. It lacks any noticeably awful album moments for me. The opener, Fading In and Fading Out, is a lovely song. Past that, it's fine. It's just bland, soft pocket pop, as Ringo always does. I think his voice on this record is still fairly strong. I don't know. 2.5. Number 5. Choose Love. Don't choose Ringo. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Strange indeed. My number 5 is 1974's Goodnight Vienna. This is a lot of people's number 2, or number 3. I would say it's weird with Ringo. There's pretty much a consensus number 1 from most people, and then kind of 2, 3, and 4 are generally the same records, kind of interchanged, and then after that is where it just gets into a hole on like who the fuck knows what order people are putting it in. And Goodnight Vienna is usually a contender for that 2 or 3 spot, but I don't know. This record grew off of me more than any of the others. I don't know what it was. It is. I think it's because I remembered the highlights of this, which to me are generally speaking the big hits, the title track, Snookeroo, No No Song. I really like all 3 of those songs, and I think they stand among anything on the Ringo record. They stand among some of his best songs, period. Um, Apart from that, though, actually, no, Only You and You Alone. I actually really like Ringo's vocal on that. It's very soft in a way that we don't hear from him generally ever. To the point where it sounds like, because it's a John Lennon song, it sounds like it's him just trying to imitate the sound of John's like guide vocal when he recorded the demo. Um, and yeah, title track is a really fun upbeat track. Snookeroo, shout out to my man Elton John for the piano riff there. And then No No Song, just kind of a fun little joke track written by Hoyt Axton, which is cool. Otherwise, I don't care actually about a lot of these songs. Acapella, what the fuck? No, I don't care. I don't know. This is either the strongest 3 star that I can think of or the very lightest 3.5 because of how strong the best songs are. And I'm gonna say that I'm in a good mood today. So light 3.5 it is. Ringo has 5 albums at 3.5 stars or more. And I never thought I would say that before starting this.
Did I remind you of his 2019 release to potentially lower it to a 3?
You know what? We are passing around positivity here. Passing
I'm
around positivity.
I'm not.
The
I'm not.
2019 record, I've forgotten about it. What's it called? What's its name? I don't remember.
I know it. I know his name because it's in because it's in my number 4. Ringo Rama, not Ringo just yet. Getting there. This is still very unfortunately a Ringo album. Overall, this one's not too bad. I'm bumping to 3 stars. 4 Ringo albums, 3 and above. Arrangements here are decent. Ringo is tolerable. There are some pretty fucking bad moments on here, to which I don't remember at this point because the 2010s overshadowed anything negative I had to say about the earlier albums. There's a couple of nice ones though. Missouri Loves Company I think is pretty good, and I did quite enjoy Imagine Me There. The rest of the songs, fine to poor, but yeah, still makes up a top 5 Ringo album for me. Good job, Ringo Rama. 3 stars. Number 4. Shout outs to Dylan. Loves that album. Wish I knew why, but yeah.
Yeah. My number 4 is going to be the album that grew the most on me. 3.5 stars for Ringo's most underrated record, 1983's Old Wave. Um, an album that, I mean, I'm not saying that no one knew about it in general, but it has been traditionally the most obscure Ringo record because of its release. It was only released in what, Canada and Australia or something like that. Didn't get a release in the UK or the US. Sorry, Canada and Germany, according to Wikipedia. Um, on some label called Bellaphon. Um, yeah, I mean, this was the last record Ringo released for over a decade, or for almost a decade, because of how critically and commercially irrelevant he was. Um, and so it's very forgotten. Um, although, so it's hard to find. It's hard to find on physical media, although I do have it on both CD and vinyl because it is a collector's item. This is Ringo's hardest rocking album across the board. And you can thank Mr. Joe Walsh for that. He is the co-producer of this one. And I don't, I am not like a Joe Walsh stan. Um, I don't know how many of those there are in this world. I am not one of them, certainly, but I do think that he adds something very interesting to this record. There's a lot of crunchy, aggressive guitars on here, which saves this album from being just, again, part of the blandness or mediocrity that you get with almost every other Ringo record. Um, I think they carry a lot. You know, I'm not going to say that Ringo does a whole lot to uplift this album. Although I actually think his vocals on here might be the best of his career, just like from a technical standpoint. I think they sound really smooth. He sounds good on Be My Baby. She's About a Mover. Um, he actually gets his low range working a little bit with that cover of I Keep Forgetting. I think the vocal sound there is really cool. Um, dare I say it? Dare I say it? I like Ringo's version of I Keep Forgetting more than David Bowie's. Um, but keep in mind, tonight was my bottom David Bowie album. Spoiler alert, potentially. Um, and then I like the kind of the two ending songs. Everybody's in a hurry, but me, and Going Down, I think is really cool. I don't know, because those songs are more like jam heavy, I guess. It's just, again, I look for those unique aspects in these Ringo records, and Old Wave, like, you know, is it a relatively anonymous rock record in a lot of ways? Yeah, it is, or pop rock record if you want to use that term. But I do think, I found myself enjoying it, which is something I cannot say for a lot of these albums. And I think there's value here. And I certainly don't think this deserves to be the most forgotten Ringo album. I mean, it wasn't on streaming services until like a year or two ago. Um, but like, let's get rid of everything that happened post like 92 before we like discard this record. I don't know. Again, my train of thought is all over the place because it's hard to talk that much about any of these albums. It's 3.5 stars. It's my number 4. Old Wave, underrated.
Sure. And number 3, kind of what I figured was gonna be my number 1 just because of what it is. I got Bo Cope, Boo Copes, whatever the fuck, a blues. It's not a blues album, so I don't know why you called it a blues. Call it Of Country. This is Ringo's country album. Yeehaw. I don't know. It's solid. He sounds good. The songs are nice. They're well performed. My favorites being Love Don't Last Long, $15 Draw, and I Wouldn't Have It Any Other Way. For what it is, I don't know. It's a decent, little easy listening country album. Ringo gets a bit of his honky tonk in there. He doesn't have any, but he gets it. I don't know. Just not a lot to sink your teeth into here. Which it's funny that I wrote that with this being the second album I listened to for the project, realizing my teeth never got planted in any of this shit. 3 stars for Bo Hoops, a blues. Yeehaw.
We're in sync. My number 3
Justin.
is, yes, Bukus of Blues, which if you use Google Translate, translates to many of blues. If you took your French, you would know that.
I took Spanish 3 years and I could tell you hi. There you go.
Yeah, that's fair. That's where I'm at. 3.5 stars for Buku's of Blues. Yeah, it is. It's Ringo's country record, and um, people give it crap because it is, in a lot of ways, a generic Nashville album. Um, it is. I will not deny that. I will not deny that. Um, Again, I think we're going. There is a sense of novelty that is being gone for here in a way that's similar to Sentimental Journey. The difference is Ringo is not suited for jazz songs at all. Ringo is kind of suited for country songs. Because that was his background for a lot of his like Beatles material early on, were like country rockabilly type songs. Um, so he actually fits in pretty naturally here for the most part. The singing is still, again, not exactly on point because it never is, but it is better than the previous record. And I also just think he's taking this material more seriously. He's just kind of having fun on Sentimental Journey, but it kind of feels like he's trying to perform these tracks somewhat earnestly. Um, I really like Without Her. I really like that song. That's one of my favorite Ringo solo songs in general. Um, the title track is good, a nice bit of fun. I also like $15 Draw if we're talking about an example of a more upbeat one. The instrumentation on here is good because it's like professional Nashville musicians, so of course it's going to be. Um, Again, it's but what do you want to say about it? Like it's consistently pretty good, and consistently pretty good does wonders for you in the Ringo Starr canon. And 3.5 stars, I feel good about that rating. I feel good about its number 3 spot. I actually thought this was going to be number 2 for a while. Um, but one record did surprise me a bit, which we'll get to soon. But Buku's a Blues,
Yes.
3.5 stars.
Number 2 is Ringo. To be honest, I still don't like this album all that much. And I'm probably more likely to listen to Buku's the Blues. I don't know. I just think the arrangements and the general songs are just better here. I don't know. They're all right. The only one I really felt all that strongly about was 6 o'clock. But on the whole, it's a decent enough, easy listening, sort of Beatles esque pop album. I don't know. 3 stars for Lil Ol Ringo. Number 2. Do you even know what I have left?
I do. That's the problem. Like,
Listen, man, I don't get it either. This broke me.
obviously, wow. God, here I was thinking we could cling on to this one piece of like, kumbaya, peace and love, like,
If
consistency at the top type of thing.
if
And
I'm
that's just been shattered
if
into a
I'm
million pieces.
if I'm being honest, I think Ringo is honestly probably more like a 2.5 for me. Because I did not enjoy listening to it, but I could at least like kind of respect it, I guess. I don't know, man. I don't like him. I don't like him one bit.
Wow. Again, I'm not offended by you putting it at number 2. What I'm amazed by is what you have at number 1.
Yeah,
Wow.
me too. Me too.
Wow. God. Okay. Well, here's my number 2, which I thought was going to be your number 1 because it contains your boy, Jeff Lynne. 1992's Time Takes Time. I can't see my fucking notes because I took my glasses off in a fury. Uh, Time Takes Time is it's 3.5 stars for me. I actually thought this was going to be lower. I thought I was going to have several 70s records ahead of this. But this one actually did grow on me as well. Um, I think I can't deny that this is undoubtedly the most consistent record he ever put out. Um, I suppose discounting Buku's the Blues, that one's technically more consistent. But apart from that, I would say Time Takes Time is his most consistent. It doesn't have the high points of past albums, but it doesn't have really any noticeable low ones either. Um, Jeff Lynne's influence in the production is very, very apparent. Um, I will say it does sort of make these songs sound like late 80s, early 90s Tom Petty a little bit, which I like that era of Tom Petty. I don't know if that's a good thing for Ringo, but it is what it is. Weight of the World opens the album very strong. I think that's one of his better songs. It doesn't get any better than that. Um, but again, at its worst, it's merely fine. Don't go where the road don't go. I'm pretty sure that's Ringo talking about his alcoholism on some level, which is interesting. Which is weird because it's a chipper fucking song. Like, oh yeah, we're talking about alcoholism, lads. Golden Blunders. Uh, I don't know. I think it's actually a decent song, generally speaking. It's all decent. It's all pretty good. And it all sounds really good. And that alone, like compared to what will come afterwards, is a blessing. Like this is the last good sounding Ringo album. Um, which I will say I do hold a grudge against Time Takes Time because it does invent the Ringo formula, so to speak. It's the first all-star band record, and everything afterwards is trying to copy it or take inspiration from it on some level. Bit irritating. But again, this record at least does it pretty well, I think, for the most part. Um, so 3.5 stars. Time Takes Time is my number two. I like it a respectable bit.
Good job. I'm happy for you. I'm really happy for you. This one. Here we go. This is the hardest shit I'll have to defend since I put the television self-titled as my number one. Here we go. Number one for me. Going Vertical Man from 1998. Here's what I'll have to say. It's not good. I'm still only at 3 stars. 20 albums, never once hit above a 7 out of 10. Good luck. But I don't know. This one felt like a turning point for Ringo. He's not trying to be as set on this or on Ringo Rama as making this sort of overt sort of pop styling. It's more Beatles-esque, and Ringo sounds quite good vocally here. And it's very well written within the first half, I would say. These are good songs for Ringo. The opener one is quite good. What in the World and King of Broken Hearts are all quite strong. I admit, his version of Love Me Do is fucking gross. None of the other tracks here excite me at all, aside from the closer I'm Yours, which I think is quite nice. However, doesn't piss me off like Ringo does, has more personality than Boo Koopa Blues. I got nothing else going for me. I didn't like a single one of these albums. And this one had 3, 4 songs I legitimately did quite enjoy. I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel to find even the tiniest bit of enjoyment out of a Ringo album. And here's the thing, it doesn't sound good, but considering the fact that I Want to Be Your Santa Claus directly follows it, and the 2010s albums, I will far forgive the production on this album in comparison to the genuinely some of the worst produced albums I've ever heard later on. It is a 3-star, decent album, and it is the peak of the Ringo Starr catalog. Number one, Vertical Man from 1998. This fucking sucked. Thank you.
The career renaissance of Ringo Starr, Vertical Man, Ringo Rama, and Choose Love.
And I honestly don't really include Choose Love on that. Choose Love is fine.
What a thing.
Man, this catalog just drained me. At least with the other ones that were bad that I didn't like. Television was 3 albums. B-52s had Cosmic Thing. Alex Chilton's a good writer. Like, Regina Spektor probably pisses me off more, but she has higher highs. Ringo's just got nothing, man. Ringo just he shot me down. I want to ride that yellow submarine because then at least I'll be getting onto whatever the fuck followed on Revolver. Actually, wait, no, didn't Good Day Sunshine follow? That song blows. Never mind. Back to Ringo.
Oh Lord. Yeah. Well, now my good mood's gone. So I transitioned to my number one. Obviously 1973's Ringo. But now I'm so pissed off that I can't give it 4 stars, which is what I was considering doing. So we're doing 3.5 stars out of protest. And it would have been an extremely weak 4 stars, anyways, if I had gone that route. Um, this record, I don't know. It is exceedingly pleasant for the most part. And with the exception of one song, this whole record is very wholesome. The one exception is the cover of Year 16, which for obvious reasons has aged terribly, which is a damn shame because the music is really fun. You have Harry Nilsson singing all the vocals on this one behind Ringo. It is a good romp, but alas, not a song that has aged at all well. Otherwise, though, I mean, you're not going to find a better collection of songs across the board on any Ringo album. Um, shush. Especially given that they stuck, like, there are some like of his major hit singles on here. They actually, I mean, they what they could have done is put the early 70s singles that preceded it on here. So they could have put on It Don't Come Easy. They could have put on Back Off Boogaloo, two of his best songs, and really beefed it up. But they didn't. Um, and in some sense, I suppose you could argue they didn't need to. Photograph is terrific. I think that's just a really great kind of Phil Spector like production. Um, I'm the Greatest. I love the attitude to that song. You have John Lennon adding those backing vocals, the stabbing guitars from George Harrison, Billy Preston adding those electric keyboard hits. It's not a substantive song at all, but that ensemble, like, it's kind of unfair how good it is, especially in that period. So, really, really good track. And then the album tracks are generally pretty fun too. I think for the most part, Devil Woman has this like LA rock feel to it, almost gives me vibes of Dennis Wilson's solo material a little bit. And then Sunshine Life for me, subtitle Sail Away Raymond, is as breezy as the title indicates. 6 o'clock is pretty good too. Oh My has kind of a catchy hook. Um, Generally speaking, it's very pleasant. It's, again, though, it's not substantive. It is Ringo and his friends just jamming and making solid pop songs. And your mileage may vary on how much you enjoy this record, obviously. And there are some people who adore it and consider it a top 10 solo Beatles record, which, more power to you if you like it that much. I'm glad you enjoy. I'm glad you have that much fun with it. I'm not at that level at all, but it is very pleasant. And again, a lot of it I think genuinely is very well constructed pop rock for the most part. And I don't know, it's a positive album. And it's nothing that I'm itching to put on again. And kind of sucks to end like an entire discussion of an artist's career with kind of a milk toast recommendation like that, because I would recommend Ringo as an album, just not wholeheartedly though. And I would imagine most people could probably get away with one spin and then never hearing it again. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Pretty strong 3.5 stars for that one. But that's the best we got. Ringo Starr.
Good for him. I'll say one thing. I was going to say that we both had Vertical Man at the top. However, on the Ringo cover, he is sadly standing diagonally, so I can't make that horrible defense for my number one. Yes. That being said, though, this was fucking awful. I'm sorry. I try to be somewhat respectful sometimes to the artists that I cover. I got nothing, man. I kind of was a defender at points. Like, what, I think Ringo could have probably gotten like 2 songs on each album. No, Takeaway is one half the time now. I'm sick of this, man. Hell, kick away his Kit. We should have done Pete Best instead. I bet that would have been more fun.
Yeah, Pete Best barely has anything. I'm pretty sure he has like 3 records with his band, and they're all just like covers of like early rock and roll songs, like what the Beatles did in Hamburg.
I mean, At least it's not 20.
It's not 20. That's
Not
true.
20. That'll
That's
be
true.
the next one. Instead of doing Bee Gees, we'll do Pete Best.
God.
Holy shit. Is there anything to say to close out Ringo? Like, is there anything even slightly noteworthy to say about this?
Um, People need to admit to themselves that not everything associated with the Beatles is great. Um, Unfortunately, and I love the Beatles. They're my favorite band. I try to be as optimistic as I can. I'm a homer in a lot of ways, but I think each one of the Beatles, I think, has a bad solo record, at least one. And uh in Ringo's case, I mean, you know,
It's got
in a way
10.
he never had a chance really. Um, but yeah, it's pretty embarrassing. And again, if it wasn't for like if it wasn't for like some of the stuff that like actually like has come out about his personal life over the time, I would feel a little bit worse about being negative about some of these records. But eh, eh,
Yeah,
I'm not that inclined to be super nice to Ringo, admittedly.
I would say be as nice to him as, I don't know, John was to his first wife or something. I don't know. There we go.
As Ringo was to his second wife.
Hey,
So
the Beatles connection right there.
I know.
That
Isn't it great?
With that being said, this was Ringo. Yeah. Okay. 20 albums, you didn't make a good one. Maybe you're more like Alex and you're slightly more forgiving of this man. I'm not. I hate this. This is the worst thing that I've ever done. Lovely discussion though. Always great having you on here. And yeah, that being said, I'm never going to listen to a Ringo song again. I will stay as far away from this as I can. And with that being said, I hope you all have a great one.